Welcome to the Impatient Entrepreneur Podcast, a show where we hear from entrepreneurs and business owners who are chomping at the bit to make their mark on the world. I'm your host, Lauren Quidar-Cockrell. Now, let's hurry up and get to the good stuff. Hi, friends. Today is going to be an incredible conversation. We have a real entrepreneur with us today, John Ghiorso, co-founder and CEO of Vanta5, an agency venture studio. They've already launched 2 agencies with more on the way, and I can't wait to dig in. John, welcome to the show.
Yeah, thanks, Lauren. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I have lots of questions for you, in addition to the ones I ask everybody. So before I start pummeling you with those, why don't I ask you the first official question, which is, John, are you an impatient entrepreneur?
I am. Yeah, I'm probably impatient to a fault. I drive everyone else around me a little bit crazy. I drive myself crazy sometimes. So yeah, I think I definitely define as that.
You're in good company then. So tell us, walk us back a little bit. You've had other businesses before that you've exited and are now in this new era, which is fascinating. I want to hear about that too. But give us a little backstory of who you are in that entrepreneurial journey, so we know where we're meeting you today.
Yeah. So the kind of long story short is I started an Amazon focused agency when I was pretty young, so in my early 20s. Very kind of humble beginnings, basically an accidental agency owner, which is a pretty common thing. Folks that end up in the agency world. Had a few clients, was doing some stuff. Over about 10 years, built that into a legitimate full service agency. We had an office on Amazon's campus in Seattle.
Oh, wow.
We had about 100 people. We were one of the bigger kind of players in our niche. I sold the business in 2020 to a global marketing services company, kind of a holdco. Stayed on for about 2.5 years, did the earnout, integration, all of that. And then basically retired. So I retired, at least kind of technically retired in my late 30s at that point. Did some stuff, did some consulting, was not fully kind of fulfilled in a way that I thought I would be. And one thing led to another, couple kind of different starts and stops, and like all this stuff is messy, right? It's like, it sounds good when you kind of look back, but it's all very messy, but ended up settling on what I'm doing now, which is called Vanta5. And it is a venture studio that's starting multiple marketing services companies or agencies. As you said, we're 2 in. We're very close. And in fact, I would say by the time people listen to this, we'll have launched our 3rd agency. Yeah. So we're on a pretty good clip. We've been at it for about a year. So we're, 3 companies in a year, I feel pretty good about. And then the goal is to launch another one every 3 to 6 months. And kind of see where we end up. But
it's so fascinating to me. I mean, how did you even come up with the concept of the studio to begin with?
So a lot of this stems from stuff that gets into personal motivation as much as it does sort of a practical money-making endeavor. I don't actually think starting multiple businesses in fairly rapid succession is the most straightforward way to make money, right? I think if I really just was like, okay, I want to make X in 5 years, the most obvious path for me, frankly, would be to wait for my non-compete to run up and then recreate my previous business and just do it again, right? Just roll it back.
Yeah.
And I'm sure in some different way, et cetera. But I already did that, so I don't want to do it again.
Yeah.
There's some things I loved about it. There were some things I did not. And you get through them because it's your first company and you do what you do. And so what I wanted to do is explore all of these ideas I have in a way that allows me to kind of legitimately bounce between companies in a way that's not just scatterbrained and self-destructive, but in a way that's actually productive. And the way I make that productive, by the way, is I'm not an operator in any of the businesses. And I have operators, and they're the people that are obsessed with their domain and the day-to-day and the clients and all of that stuff that someone very much has to be in charge of. And then I get to kind of float on top of all of them and come up with ideas and recruit great founders and entrepreneurs, and hopefully help accelerate the businesses and operationalize them, et cetera. And I get to really focus the vast majority of my time on stuff I love doing and I'm good at. Which, in most cases, you get to do some of that, but there's a lot of like stuff that you just have to get done. You have to take out the proverbial trash. So, it's as a second act, you get to be a little bit choosier, and that's basically what I'm doing.
What a sweet spot. I am giddy for you and also wildly jealous.
It's been super fun so far. It's I think it's going to work, right? Like, I'm pretty optimistic. It's been a lot of fun, and 6 months, a year from now, I think we'll know for sure this is going to work.
And so the two that are live now, what are those agencies?
Yeah. So the first one, and this is again where the story gets a little bit messy, but the first one I didn't start. My co-founder actually started it.
Okay.
So it's an agency called Influent Social, and it is a full service LinkedIn agency, and it's super well. It's actually been around for about a year and a half, I think. It's basically aiming to maximize the potential of the LinkedIn platform for B2B companies of all different sort of shapes and sizes.
Okay.
And I could do, that's kind of, could do a whole podcast on that. The second one is called Longbow. It's also a B2B focused agency, but it's focused on building outbound systems that drive leads and convert those leads to booked marketing qualified prospects in a way that heavily leverages AI and automation and marketing versus the traditional way of doing this, which is with sales teams. So another way to think about this is Longbow is taking what has traditionally been the domain of human-driven sales teams and replacing it with marketing and automation. Replacing or augmenting. Our goal is not to get rid of sales people. They still have really important jobs. But there's a lot of stuff that happens upstream of a traditional kind of like sales engagement that if you deploy it via, AI and technology, can be done much more efficiently, effectively, and with much greater scale. And there's kind of a renaissance right now happening with outbound as a result of AI and some of these other emerging technologies. And it's a really fascinating place to kind of be involved. And then the third one, I won't say the name, but I can talk about it. It's a TikTok shop agency. So we have two B2B agencies, and we're kind of, making a hard right turn back over to consumer land. TikTok shop is, I'm a commerce guy. Like that's my core sort of domain expertise. TikTok shop and social commerce in general is the most important trend in the world of retail that I've seen in the last decade. Like it just is. Like I started my career with Amazon and the sort of e-commerce revolution. Direct to consumer was obviously a big deal. That was kind of, at least in my career, like the second big wave. And to me, this is the third one. It's nascent, it's early, it's the Wild West in terms of what's, people trying things and some stuff works and some stuff doesn't. But my goal is to professionalize, systematize, and ultimately become the kind of the most well-known, biggest agency in this domain of TikTok shop and social commerce.
Very cool. Well, before you said that, I was going to ask you if the intent was to move clients through the ecosystem of agencies, but maybe not.
It was really elegant in the first two, and the third one was like, oh, it kind of throws all that out the window because they're not going to share clients, right? Like a B2B, SaaS company and a, consumer product company making makeup are obviously very different companies with very different needs. So, it would be nice if there was this perfect kind of elegant through line. I think the through line, and I was actually having a conversation with a mentor of mine yesterday about this, because I like things to be elegant and kind of in that way. The through line is the operating model, the way we are approaching these domains, and the way we are picking the domains themselves. That's actually the through line, and it takes a little bit longer to explain than like how we share clients. That's the through line and should be the connective tissue between all of these.
Yeah, fair enough. So you and your co-founder come up with a concept for an agency, and then you go find an entrepreneur or an entrepreneur who's going to be your operator, and then they take that as their baby with you two as the very godfathers, like help the vision, or how does that fundamentally work?
Yeah, basically. So it's kind of like market testing, market research in tandem with ideating the concept. So first it's like, there's this big fuzzy thing and trend happening. And I'll give you a real example of this, something I'm thinking about right now. Reddit is a fascinating company. It is, I think I could get this wrong, but it's something like the third most trafficked website in the world.
I think it's close to it, if not that.
It's at least like top 10, right? It is incredibly important in terms of driving decision-making, consumer behavior. It's ranked really high in both SEO and with LLMs. There's a real meaningful kind of conversation happening, regardless of whether you're a service company or a product company. If you're doing anything with consumers, Reddit is important, yet most companies really ignore it. Because it's scary and it's weird. And like, anyway, I won't make this a Reddit.
People be peopling out there.
Yeah, exactly. And so like, that's like, we start with that idea, like, that's strange. That seems like a market misalignment. There's more opportunity than there is expertise. There's more consumer behavior than there is attention. Like there's a mismatch. Then start going down the path of, okay, is there a business opportunity? What does that business look like? What is the day one service? What's the foothold of like, we can go out and get 10 clients, sell them this thing that we do. And then what is the long-term 5-year vision? If we're a $20 million revenue business in 5 years, like what are we doing collectively, right? And so we kind of define both of those. Once we do that, then we start going down the path of, okay, who's the best operator for this business? And there's kind of like non-negotiables across the company's values, et cetera, like that I would look for in any CEO to do any business. And then there's domain-specific skill sets, expertise, experience, et cetera. And then we run a formal process of recruiting and, interviewing and all that. Hopefully we have someone good or multiple people and make a decision. And then we actually now start standing up and building and operationalizing the business. So
very interesting. And will there be an intent to have like a family of businesses and a community of people, whether they're the operators or their team members, where there's shared learnings and like y'all are coming together? I mean,
yeah, for sure. We don't have anything formal there yet because we only have 3 companies, right? At this point, so it's pretty informal, but there's absolutely a lot of shared learnings. I use this analogy sometimes of restaurants, but when it comes to agencies, like you can go into a fast casual Mexican food place or a fine dining Asian fusion restaurant. The food is very different, right? The decor is different. The experience is very different. But on the back end, kitchen kind of runs the same way. The economics of dealing with suppliers works the same way, right? Like the way you finance it or get debts or whatever kind of is going to operate the same way. You need a payroll system right? Like, so, and agencies are the same way, like this TikTok shop agency versus a LinkedIn agency, very different service, different clients, et cetera. But like a lot of the stuff on the back end and how to properly operationalize these things, there's actually kind of one right answer. And you just know the right answer and you just kind of do it over and over again. So
relentlessly repeatable. So I find that entrepreneurs tend to be very much autodidacts and lifelong learners. Have there been any books or podcasts or mentors or conferences that have been really pivotal as you've grown in your journey?
Yeah, I'm a big, I would just say consumer of information. I'm absolutely that. In fact, I think some people do this naturally. I actually think most people don't do it enough. Yeah. I think entrepreneurs need to spend more time just consuming high quality information because you're only as good as the decisions you make are. And like this idea of you can just like grind your way to success is sure hard work is important, but like, putting in another putting in 16 hours versus 14 hours of work versus like improving the sort of, software that you're running is, anyway, that's a whole sort of separate talk track. But to answer your question, I'm trying to think of any like real standouts. I'm a big fan of books that were written by people that really did impressive stuff, right? I'm mostly not a fan of, and there are some exceptions to this, I'm not a fan of like the business guru stuff. A lot of it to me feels like this could have been a 2-page essay. And
you got a book deal, so you made it longer.
Yeah, exactly. Like there's a lot of that and I'm also a fan of like just throwing away books.
Yeah.
Like there's this thing where it's like, oh, it's sacred, I have to finish it. It's like, no, if you're like 2 chapters in, get rid of it, move on. So I recently reread Reid Hoffman's book. I reread Peter Thiel's book. Like guys that like did it.
Yeah.
I'm a fan of those books. I think there's some podcasts that are really like domain specific that I'm listening to. That tends to be the podcast I listen to. I don't actually listen to a ton of like generalist sort of business podcasts. I'll give you a weird one though. Maybe it's not that weird. It's starting to become less weird. I spend a lot of time talking to an AI.
Oh,
like hours a week. And if you position ChatGPT or one of the others that have the kind of two-way voice thing, if you position it as an expert in a given field, and then you pretend like you're talking to a professor of whatever in whatever subject you're interested in, and just pepper it with questions, you could read a book, and what you're really trying to find is 5 pages of information that you have to sort through 200 pages of stuff that isn't directly relevant.
Yes.
I just find now with AI, you can just ask such targeted, pointed questions, and you can say stuff like, "Hey, can you like explain that? Like you're explaining it to a high school student."
It's me.
Yeah, exactly. You can ask it 5 times, and you're not going to be embarrassed like you would be if it was a mentor or friend or something. Like, I'm not this. You can have it give you different examples or different angles. Okay, I understand that, but how does that relate to that other concept? Is that the same as that, or is it in some hierarchy? For me, I just find it incredibly useful to sort of triangulate information in that way.
Absolutely. Yeah. Somebody really opened my eyes almost a year ago. They're like, even if you're a big reader, you will never read as many books as ChatGPT has, synthesized and received the input of. So it's just like, you're a fool if you're not taking advantage of some information. Obviously making sure it's not hallucinating along with it, but yeah, I think that's to take advantage of it in that way of teach me something. I have to try that out.
Yeah, and I find if you're on well-trodden ground, if you're trying to educate yourself on stuff that you could educate yourself in a college course on, basically, right? I find it's very good. And it just has such a critical mass of data.
Right.
You're starting to get into really nuanced, really specific, or really like things that need to be up to date over the last couple of weeks. That's where it starts to hallucinate and get like, I don't know if that's right. It starts to sound weird.
What?
But if you're like, hey, I'm thinking about this debt structure for my business. I just need to be more educated on it. How does this work? Give me examples. Like that, that stuff that it's read thousands of textbooks on. It's going to get it right.
Right. So. And I love the note about, you can ask it to clarify and clarify and clarify without being like, sorry, can you say it differently, please?
Sure. No, it's great. I recently, actually, here's a book I would recommend. The Innovator's Dilemma by Clay Christensen is a must read, in my opinion.
All right.
It's a pretty dense book. And it uses some really out of date examples because it was written in like the 90s. So it's talking about like floppy disks and hard drives and stuff. So like having to remember back, okay, I kind of remember that.
Yeah.
Anyway, that is an example of great book. And then if you augment it, this is what I did, maybe because I'm slow, I don't know. But augment it with ChatGPT and go, listen, can you explain this to me? Can you give me a more contemporary example? Can you and this is like this is how people learn in college, right? The reason we go to college or we go to school is we don't just and the reason idea of, well, you could just get a library card instead of a, education. The reason that's actually not true is because people have to learn in kind of this multimodal way where you hear it and then you talk about it and then you write an essay on it and then you talk about the essay and then you triangulate and find like the flaws in your logic and then someone else reads their essay. Like that's the way we actually really synthesize information. And I find that using AI as like a coach, tutor, professor, mentor, where it's not exclusively using it to get information, but like you read a book and then talk to the AI about the book to make sure you fully understand it. That I think is hugely kind of a force multiplier in terms of your speed to really deeply understand and synthesize information.
Yeah, that's such a great advice, because I also consume at a very fast clip, podcasts, audiobooks, other written books. But I zoom through them. I don't necessarily, pause to I'm like, oh, that's an interesting note. I'll kind of take that away. But I don't sit with it for very long. And that's a good way to really have it stick a little better.
Yeah. Well, and then you can also go like, okay, I just read Clay Christensen, which he's talking about, how floppy drive manufacturers were disrupted in 1995, but it's a brilliant book and concept. The AI now knows a lot about my business, right? And I can go, hey, how does this work with Vantify? I'm trying to disrupt agency holdcos with these agencies I'm building. They're the incumbents in the innovator's dilemma. What are some ideas? How should I think about this? Like, is it coming up with anything truly novel? No, probably not. But it's really good at kind of taking existing information and applying it, remixing it, and it in terms of improving my thinking, which is hopefully novel, super useful. So
love it. Thank you. Is there anything in particular that you're impatient about right now? Business number 3, of course, but
I have a lot more ideas. And you can't start a company every month. I think that's insane. And I'm probably hitting the limit of how many companies you can start in succession while still taking them as seriously as each one needs to be taken. Right? Because if you don't take them seriously, then what are you even doing? You're just half-assing this, I have all these companies, but they're all sort of failing and struggling. Yeah. What is the point of that? Yeah. So that's the thing I'm impatient about is I see a dozen real opportunities out there that I don't have fully baked in my mind, but I can tell there's something there. And yeah, that's what I'm impatient about.
Yeah, absolutely. So. It's there's only so much time and energy and money. I'm sure these companies, once they get off the ground, they need you too. I mean, they're sufficient operators, but as a visionary, they need you and to be there to kind of at least keep one finger on the helm.
Yeah, I'm a fan of looking at constraints in business to go okay, well, if we're going to be a company of X size, it's maybe what the mission really is determining what that is, how you're going to get there, and then removing the roadblocks, removing the constraints to scaling rapidly. And at first, the constraint was cash, sort of. But now that the companies are doing well, the thing is sort of self-funding. So, okay. And agencies, it's not cheap, right? It's all relative, I suppose, but they're not super cash intensive businesses to start. Now the constraints of my time. Yeah. And, potentially trying to figure out how does that's a harder problem to solve, right? Because cash is cash. It's pretty interchangeable. Time and expertise, that's trickier. But anyway, that's sort of the next big meta challenge for me to figure out. Is there a way to scale myself?
Right. So. Entrepreneurial mitosis. So switching gears a little bit, as you look back at the entity you have now and your business prior, what's something that happened that, you're trucking along and then all of a sudden the rug gets pulled out from underneath you and you think, well, not sure we're gonna make it. But something that it seems like the worst thing ultimately turned out to be one of the best things that could have happened.
Yeah, there's quite a few of these. I'll just pick one. It's not totally random. It was stressful at the time. When I was kind of in the earlier days of running my first agency, we were quite profitable. Like, and we had always been quite profitable. A lot of that is because of, frankly, just being in the right place at the right time.
Sure.
Like Amazon was so hot that, and I think we did a really good job. We had a great reputation. We literally had zero churn. For the first 7 years of the company, we didn't lose a single client. So it was all compounding. Our clients would get bigger, and then we'd add more clients, and then those would get bigger. And it was kind of like hard not to make money. So in my, mid-20s, first time entrepreneur naivete, I basically way overhired. Like we were like, financially running the company basically on a napkin, but it was like a 7-figure. I mean, it was, I don't know, $4 million, $5 million business at that point. And, got to the point where I was like hiring someone once a week.
Oh, wow.
Because we were signing clients, right? So it was like, there was a reason to hire, but it was just in such a sort of haphazard way that we were doing it that I literally remember it was like a Saturday night or so. It was one of those like where I'm just like in my office, like looking at the spreadsheet, like doing my own stupid, like totally not like, non-professional, like back the napkin math. And I'm just like, like, I think we're going to drive ourselves into like a very big financial ditch very quickly. And I wish there was some like great lesson or epiphany, but basically what happened is I freaked out. We paused hiring. We didn't do layoffs, but we were like, okay, pause hiring. Go from hiring a person a week to just like, don't hire anyone until we figure this out. We kind of figured it out. And then in tandem with that, we had these growth bonuses, basically. And it turned out that we were really good at what we did. And Amazon was, we were riding the right wave. Plus, I think we were good at what we did. And we basically had a couple of these like commission growth bonuses hit all at once. We made way more than we thought we were going to make. And with the hiring pause in that, it kind of right-sized it. And like, we just lucked into this not like destroying the business, but it was pretty close. I mean, it was like if a few things, which was mostly luck, would have just shifted in the other direction, we would have been going from, we would have been in like $1 million hole where it's like, I don't just have like $1 million that I can just like write $1 million check into this business. So I guess the lesson there, if there is one, was, we need like a professionalized like financial system.
It comes for us all.
Like, okay, that is probably obvious and probably something you should do when you're $1 million business, not a $5 million business. But, we did that and then we didn't find ourselves, we made other mistakes, but we didn't find ourselves in this like amateurish financial catastrophe again.
Well, I mean, you're just, sometimes you're riding this rocket ship of growth, but you find yourself like strapped to the outside of it. You're like, whoa, gotta figure some stuff out.
Like, I remember at the time too, if this is useful for anyone, like, I was psychologically, I had gotten very anchored to the idea that the size of the company in terms of like its staff was representative of how successful it was. Because that is the way the world tends to, at least with like agencies, because they're people businesses, that's the way people tend to talk about this business. Oh, you have a 30-person agency. I have a 50-person agency. I have a 100-person agency. Because we assume if you have that many people, you must have revenue, and people don't like talking about their revenue. So what they do as a stand-in is they talk about people, which is a more sort of polite, vague way of saying, look at how much money I'm making. The problem is if you're, 26 and you don't fully think through this, you start actually like sort of going after the wrong goals. Oh, like the bigger the company is, the more successful I am. And
right.
Like,
vanity metrics.
Yeah, exactly. Or maybe you just have like a bigger nonprofit that you're so anyway.
Right. And how was it? I mean, how many people did you have at that juncture? Do you
So
recall?
I think we had maybe like 30 people, but we were literally hiring like 4 people a month. So
That's
it was
wild.
like, yeah. And it was like when you have 20 or it was like 20 or 30 people, I want to say,
Mm-hmm.
when you have 20 or 30 people and you're hiring that many additional people, you also like, there's no infrastructure and stuff
Yeah.
gets kind
Mm-hmm.
of crazy as a result of that too. But
Mm-hmm.
yeah.
And how did you, I'm just trying to think of myself being that age. That would have been critical mass for sure. Um, uh, how did you figure out? Did you bring in experts to help you? Did you just knuckle down and figure out how to manage that many cats running around? Or
I had uh, some leaders around me from the beginning that were great.
Mm-hmm.
And they were sort of, they were older than me. They
Mm-hmm.
were kind of the adults in the room.
Yeah.
Uh, that was super helpful. And then I also brought in some of those people from the outside
Mm-hmm.
as well.
Good.
And, you know, I've always prided myself on, I don't know if I get this perfect all the time, but I've always prided myself on like trying to understand the objective truth of what's happening,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
meaning like triangulate other people's opinions,
Mm-hmm.
hire people that are smart and knowledgeable and I trust their judgment and then like listening to them.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I always agree with everything, but
Right.
like trying to have that kind of kitchen cabinet of,
Mm-hmm.
other advisors and experts and et cetera.
Mm-hmm.
So I think it was, I think that's what allowed me to be, relatively successful at
Yeah.
a young age is, really through the agency of others. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
I had this vision that I really believed in and I was right.
Mm-hmm.
So like in the sort of the really big picture thing, I had a couple of the values and the vision and stuff. I think I had that right. And then the rest was just figuring it out as I went along.
Mm-hmm.
But a lot of it was figured out through others who had sort of seen the movie before.
Right. Well, and so wise of you at that age too, to ask for help and to trust the counsel of others. I feel like a lot of times people, especially if they start a company and then achieve rapid ascent, particularly if we're on the younger side, but not always. Sometimes we're older too. The ego is very much a part of it, and it's like, well, I'm having this success, and it's all me, and that I'm not gonna listen to anybody else. So,
Yeah, for sure.
So good for you.
Yeah, I'm sure I've done things that were arrogant, in the past, but youth and arrogance can be a pretty dangerous combination. The agency world is one of rapid ascents and just as rapid declines.
Mm-hmm. Right. Absolutely.
It's filled with stories.
Yeah.
So.
So growing up, when you were a kiddo, did you have a little business when you were a kid as well, or was post grad your first entity?
I did some stuff, right? Like I remember I had a little business where I sold stuff to my classmates, and like I was always very interested in the idea of making money. More from I was a super shy kid, so it was more from like an academic standpoint. Like I read a lot of books. I was a weird kid. I would read like all these business books when I was a teenager. Then I didn't really do that much with it. I was just like, oh, I'm gonna do this. I'm gonna like be an investor, and I'm gonna, I read all these books on investing now, which now seems like they're all pretty straightforward, but invest in the stock market and a lot of those kind of books. And yeah, I was like kind of this weird, shy, nerdy kid that was like just really interested in I just loved the idea of in my, 13-year-old brain of being rich. Yeah. I don't know why, really. Why does a 13-year-old care about that? But I did. I thought that would be the greatest thing ever. And as I matured a little bit, I think I got, created a little more sophistication around that sort of goal, I suppose. But yeah.
Right. It's like, how do we cook that up in our brains? So you might have alluded to it a little bit here, but was there a personality trait of yours that you felt was a weakness, or someone made you feel like it was a weakness when you're a kid, but now you feel like it's your superpower?
Well, a weakness of mine for sure was that I was really shy. I wouldn't say that's a superpower. I would say I fixed it.
Brute force.
Yeah, very literally forced myself to sort of fix it. Yeah, I think I see the world in in like an unusual way.
Mm.
So I'm not dyslexic, but I have like weird like I'll write letters differently all the time. Like most people when they write an A, they like write it the same way, and I'll write it like a different made up way every time I write it. I don't know why. Um so I see the world in in sort of strange ways, which for sure can make it more challenging because it's like harder to sort of like get with the program or like, be on the same page as other people. But I do think it gives me like a strange sort of creativity as well, where I can sort of see paths that other people don't see that can kind of open up for me. So I think, I think that's like really tough when you're like in high school or junior high or whatever. But I think if you point it in the right direction, that's been very useful to me. And yeah, I mean, just like I've always had this kind of level of like nerdiness, but I don't know, now I feel like you can be nerdy and like it's totally fine. You just find other people that are nerdy and they're your friends.
Right.
And
Gen Z has got it made in the shade a little bit in that regard. So. But right, we're I think similar age range, but homogenous thinking was where it was at in high school and middle school and everything. So if you thought differently, you're definitely an outsider, but bringing that to when it comes time to make some money, it's good to be able to think differently.
Yeah. I think so. It's so I try to sort of lean into that now.
Absolutely. So getting close to wrapping up here, you've given us a lot of advice today, and thank you for that. Do you have a final piece of advice for our listeners to make their lives and businesses stronger and better?
I would actually relate it back to, I think you should shift the ratio. Maybe there's some extreme in the other direction here, but I think most entrepreneurs that I run into and talk to, I think would benefit from shifting the ratio between doing and learning a little bit towards learning. Not, you can't be academic. You can't sit around and read books all day on how to do something. You have to go do it. Of course, you need a bias for action. But I see our minds as like these supercomputers, and the more data you can feed into the supercomputer, the better decision it's going to make. Like, I think about someone like Jeff Bezos, right? Jeff Bezos has not worked significantly harder than me, right? He hasn't put in 10x the hours. You can't physically. What Jeff Bezos did that I have not done is he made way better decisions. That is the X factor between me and a billionaire. They just made better decisions. And maybe it's because they're smarter, but there's nothing I can do about that. Right. So I think what you can control is the information that you have. You can't control like the hardware. The hardware is what it is. But you can kind of update the software and update the data that your mind has access to. And I do think that's a underutilized leverage point that everyone has access to. So
great. Love it. All right. Where can people find you?
Vanta5 spelled out.com is the website that just kind of tracks the various companies we're launching, and you go to their sites from there. And then you can follow me on LinkedIn. That's kind of where I'm most active. Just John Ghiorso. I'm the only one. You'll find me.
And we'll put it in the show notes too. Thank you, John. This has been a lot of fun. I really appreciate it.
Yeah. Thanks so much, Lauren.
Thanks for listening to The Impatient Entrepreneur. Love the podcast? Be sure to share it with a friend or colleague and give us a 5-star review. You can also chat with us on Instagram or Facebook at The Impatient Entrepreneur Pod. Want to star on a feature episode? Head over to theimpatiententrepreneur.com to inquire. Thank you to the team at Quidar & Co. for believing in me and bringing this podcast to life. And thank you to Carson Childers for mixing and editing this episode. I can't wait to see you next time.